Hello, and welcome to 20 Minutes with Jesus. Take a deep breath for a moment. There is no rush here, no need to have answers, no pressure to feel strong. As a new year approaches, many hearts begin to feel something they cannot fully explain. It is not always panic. Often, it is quieter than that. A sense of uneasiness, a heaviness when thinking about what lies ahead. A fear that lingers beneath the surface, fear of what might change, fear of what might not change, fear of repeating old pains, fear of facing new ones. This kind of fear is very real, and it is important to say this clearly. Feeling fear does not mean you lack faith. Fear is often a response to uncertainty, not a sign of spiritual failure. When the future feels unclear, the heart naturally searches for stability. A new year brings expectations, but it also brings unknowns. We do not know what our health will look like. We do not know how finances will unfold. We do not know how relationships may shift. And when we try to imagine all of that at once, the mind becomes overwhelmed. Some people feel pressured to enter a new year feeling confident and hopeful, but many are entering it feeling tired, cautious, or unsure. If that is where you are not alone. And you are not disappointing God by feeling this way. God is not intimidated by your fear. He is not disappointed by your questions. He is not distant from your uncertainty. Fear becomes heavier when we believe we must carry the future by ourselves. When we feel responsible for controlling what cannot be controlled, anxiety begins to take root. The mind starts rehearsing scenarios that have not yet happened, and the heart begins to live tomorrow's worries today. This is exhausting. You may notice fear showing up as constant thinking, or as difficulty resting, or as a tightness in your chest when you think about the coming year. Sometimes fear disguises itself as preparation, but underneath it is the need for reassurance. And here is something gentle but important to remember. God never asked you to carry the future alone. He never intended for your peace to depend on your ability to predict what will happen next. Fear often grows when we look at the future without remembering who walks with us. It whispers that we are not enough, that we will not handle what comes, that we will be overwhelmed when challenges appear. But fear only tells part of the story. It tells you that the future is unknown, but it forgets to mention that God is known. The reality is this: many faithful people feel fear when standing at the edge of a new season. Fear does not disqualify you. It invites you to bring your heart closer to God. Faith does not begin by pretending fear does not exist. Faith begins by acknowledging it honestly. You do not need to silence your fear before coming to God. You are invited to come with it. As we begin this time together, allow yourself to be honest about what you are carrying. There is no need to rush toward courage. There is no need to force confidence. God meets you exactly where you are. This first step is not about fixing the fear. It is about noticing it, naming it, and allowing God's presence to enter that space gently. You are not weak for feeling this way. You are human, and you are not walking into the next year alone. There is a subtle but powerful difference between living the future in front of circumstances and living the future in front of God. Most fear about a new year is not rooted in what has already happened, but in what we imagine might happen. The heart places itself before possible problems and begins to measure its own strength against them. When we live this way, circumstances become the reference point for peace. If things look stable, we feel calm. If uncertainty appears, fear grows. But faith invites us into a different posture, one where God, not circumstances, becomes the place where we stand. Living the future before God means recognizing that every day of the coming year already exists in His presence. Not as a surprise, not as a risk, but as something fully known to Him. God is not guessing what will happen next year. He is not waiting to see how things unfold. He is already present in every moment you have not yet reached. This changes how the heart carries tomorrow. When we live before circumstances, we ask, what if this goes wrong? When we live before God, we ask, who will be with me if it does? Fear grows when the mind imagines facing the future alone. Faith grows when the heart remembers that it never stands alone. Living before God does not mean ignoring reality. It means remembering whose presence surrounds reality. Many people feel overwhelmed because they place themselves in front of imagined outcomes without placing God there first. They picture conversations, losses, challenges, and responsibilities, but they picture them without God's presence filling the scene. This creates fear that feels very real, even though the situation has not yet arrived. Faith gently reorders that picture. Living before God means learning to see the future through the lens of His presence. It means remembering that every unknown moment is already known to Him. Every challenge that may come is not bigger than His awareness. Every burden that feels heavy to you is already held in His hands. This does not mean the future will be easy. Faith does not promise comfort in every circumstance, but it does promise presence, and presence changes everything. When the heart lives before God, peace no longer depends on control. It rests in trust. Trust that God sees further than you do. Trust that He understands what you cannot yet understand. Trust that He is not absent from the unknown. Living before God also shifts responsibility. When we live before circumstances, we feel responsible for preventing everything that could go wrong. When we live before God, we learn to surrender outcomes and focus on obedience, trust, and daily faithfulness. This brings relief. You are not responsible for carrying the entire year on your shoulders. You are not required to solve problems that have not yet appeared. God invites you to walk one day at a time, trusting that He is already present in the days ahead. Fear often comes from trying to live too far in the future. Faith brings us back to the present moment, where God is already near. Living before God teaches the heart to ask, what is required of me today, instead of, how will I survive the whole year? Today requires trust. Today requires surrender. Today requires presence, and God meets you here. As the new year approaches, you may feel pressure to make plans, set goals, and prepare for everything ahead. Planning can be wise, but fear begins when planning turns into control. Living before God means allowing plans to remain open to His leading. God's presence does not remove uncertainty. It removes loneliness within uncertainty. This is the posture faith invites us into, not standing in front of circumstances, trying to measure their weight, but standing before God, allowing His presence to become the place where the heart rests. When the future is lived before God, fear begins to loosen its grip. Not because answers appear, but because trust grows. Not because circumstances change, but because the heart's position changes. You do not walk into the next year unaccompanied. You walk into it seen, known, and held. And that truth quietly strengthens the soul. Fear and faith are often spoken of as opposites, but in real life they frequently coexist. One does not automatically cancel the other. Many people believe that if they feel fear, they must not be living by faith. But this belief creates unnecessary guilt and distance from God. There is an important difference between feeling fear and living by fear. Feeling fear is a human response. Living by fear is allowing that response to direct your decisions, shape your thoughts, and determine how you face the future. Faith does not demand the absence of fear. Faith invites us to choose who leads us when fear appears. Even faithful people feel fear. Fear arises when we care deeply, when the future matters to us, when something valuable feels uncertain. The presence of fear does not mean faith is missing. It often means faith is being invited to grow deeper. Living by faith means that fear does not have the final word. Faith does not silence fear by force. It gently repositions it. Instead of letting fear stand in front of you and block the way forward, faith places fear beside you and reminds it that God is present. This is where many hearts find relief. You do not need to wait until fear disappears to trust God. You do not need to feel brave to walk by faith. Faith is not courage created within yourself. It is trust placed in someone greater than yourself. Fear says, "What if I can't handle what's coming?" Faith responds, "God will be with me, whatever comes." Fear says, "What if this year brings loss or disappointment?" Faith responds, "God remains faithful, even in seasons I don't understand." Fear focuses on outcomes. Faith focuses on presence. Living by faith does not mean ignoring the realities of life. It means choosing not to let those realities define your peace. Faith allows you to acknowledge uncertainty without being ruled by it. This distinction matters deeply when approaching a new year. Many people enter a new season already exhausted because they are trying to prepare emotionally for every possible challenge. They rehearse future problems in their minds, hoping that anticipation will protect them. But anticipation rooted in fear only drains the heart. Faith offers a different way. Faith invites you to live one day at a time, trusting that God's grace will meet you in each moment. It reminds you that you do not receive strength for an entire year all at once. You receive daily grace, daily wisdom, daily presence. Living by faith means you stop asking, "Will I be strong enough for the whole year?" and begin asking, "Who is with me today?" This shift brings rest. Fear tries to carry the weight of the future in advance. Faith trusts that God will carry it with you, step by step. Fear demands guarantees. Faith leans on relationship. Faith does not promise that nothing difficult will happen. It promises that God will not withdraw His presence when difficulty comes. This is why faith is not fragile. It is relational. When fear rises, living by faith looks like turning your attention back to God. Not in panic, not in desperation, but in quiet trust. It looks like prayer that says, "God, I don't know what this year holds, but I know who you are." This kind of faith is honest. It does not hide fear. It brings fear into the light of God's presence, where fear begins to lose its power. Living by faith also means allowing God to redefine what safety truly is. Safety is not the absence of problems. Safety is the assurance of God's nearness. When the heart understands this, fear no longer feels like an enemy to fight, but a signal to draw closer to God. You may still feel fear as the new year approaches. That does not disqualify you from faith. It gives you an opportunity to practice it. Each moment of fear becomes a doorway to trust. Faith is not loud. It is steady. It is patient. It is rooted. As you stand at the threshold of a new year, you are not asked to choose between fear and faith. You are invited to let faith lead when fear speaks. To let trust shape your steps, even when emotions fluctuate. This is the heart of living by faith. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of God guiding the heart beyond it. When fear begins to take shape in the mind, it often does so through thoughts. Thoughts about what might happen. Thoughts about what could go wrong. thoughts that repeat themselves quietly until the heart feels restless. Learning how to relate to these thoughts is an important part of walking by faith. The first step is noticing them without judgment. Anxious thoughts do not mean you are weak. They are signals. They reveal where the heart is trying to protect itself. Instead of fighting these thoughts aggressively, faith invites us to slow down and examine them gently. Ask yourself, is this thought helping me trust God? Or is it pulling me further into fear? Many anxious thoughts are rooted in imagination rather than reality. They project future scenarios without grace, without God's presence, and without the reminder that strength is given daily. When this happens, the mind runs ahead of the heart, and peace is left behind. Faith invites us to bring our thoughts back into the present moment. You do not need to solve the entire year in your mind today. You only need to be present with God now. When anxious thoughts arise, it can be helpful to quietly redirect your attention, not by forcing silence, but by gently returning to truth. Truth reminds us that God is near. Truth reminds us that today has enough grace. Truth reminds us that tomorrow is already held. Another important practice is learning to pause. Anxiety rushes. Faith slows down. A simple pause allows the body to relax, the mind to settle, and the heart to remember that it is not alone. You can bring your thoughts to God honestly. You do not need polished prayers. You can simply say, God, this thought is heavy. I place it in your hands. Over time, this practice trains the heart to respond to anxiety with trust instead of panic. God does not demand that you control your thoughts perfectly. He invites you to bring them into His presence, where peace can begin to grow. Let us take this final moment together in prayer. God, we come before you just as we are. We bring you our fears about the coming year, the questions we cannot answer, the concerns we try to hide, the weight we feel when we think about what lies ahead. You see our hearts clearly. You know what worries us before we speak. And today, we choose to place the next year in your hands. We ask you to quiet our anxious thoughts. Help us release the need to control what we cannot foresee. Teach us to trust you one day at a time, one step at a time. When fear rises, remind us that you are present. When uncertainty feels heavy, remind us that you are faithful. When our strength feels small, remind us that your grace is enough for today. We do not ask to see the whole path ahead. We ask only for your presence as we walk. Lead our hearts into peace. Guard our minds with your truth. And help us rest in the assurance that nothing we face will be faced alone. We place the coming year before you, not with pressure, but with trust, not with fear, but with hope, not with striving, but with surrender. Thank you for walking with us. Thank you for holding what we cannot carry. Thank you for being the God who goes before us. Amen. As we come to the end of this time, allow your heart to remain still for a moment. You do not need to rush back into worry or planning. The future does not need to be solved right now. God is already there. If this moment spoke to your heart, continue this quiet journey of faith. Return to God in moments of fear. Pause with Him when thoughts feel heavy. Let trust grow gently, without force. Until we meet again, may your heart remain at rest, your steps remain steady, and your hope remain anchored in God's presence.